Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 2, Chapter 28. When Alexei Alexandrovich reached the racecourse, Anna was already in her place beside Betsy, in the grand pavilion where the high society was gathered in a brilliant throng. She saw her husband from a distance and involuntarily followed him as he came along. She saw him approach the pavilion, replying with rather haughty condescension to the salutations which were meant to draw his attention, exchanging careless greetings with his equals, watching to catch the glances of the great ones of the earth, to whom he paid his respects by removing his large round hat, which came down to the tops of his ears. Anna knew all these mannerisms of salutation, and they were all equally distasteful to her. Nothing but ambition, craze for success, it's all that his heart contains, she thought. As to his lofty views, his love of civilization, his religion, they're only means whereby to gain an end. That is all. It was evident from the glances that Karenin cast on the pavilion that he was seeking vainly for his wife in the sea of muslins, ribbons, feathers, flowers, and sunshades. Anna knew that he was looking for her, but she pretended not to see him. "Alexei Alexandrovich," cried the Princess Betsy, "don't you see your wife? Here she is." He looked up with his icy smile. "Everything's so brilliant here that it blinds the eyes," he replied as he came up to the pavilion. He smiled at Anna, as it is a husband's duty to do when he has only just left his wife, bowed to Betsy and his other acquaintances, showing himself gallant towards the ladies and polite towards the men. A general, famous for his wit and his knowledge, was nearby, and Alexei Alexandrovich joined him and engaged in conversation. It was between the two races. The general attacked such kinds of amusement, Alexei Alexandrovich defended them. Anna heard his slow, shrill voice and lost none of the words which her husband spoke, which rang unpleasantly in her ear. When the hurdle race began, she leaned forward, not letting Vronsky out of her sight for an instant. She saw him approach his horse and then mount it. Her husband's voice kept floating up to her and was odious to her. She felt for Vronsky, but she suffered painfully at the sound of his voice, every intonation of which she knew. "I'm a wicked woman, a lost woman," she thought, "but I hate falsehood. I cannot endure lies, but he," meaning her husband, "lives nearby them. Liar! He knows all, he sees everything. How much feeling is he if he can go on speaking with such calmness? I should have some respect for him if he killed me, if he killed Vronsky, but no! What he prefers above everything is falsehood and conventionality." Anna did not exactly know what she would have liked her husband to be, and she did not understand that the very volubility of Alexei Alexandrovich, which irritated her so, was only the expression of his interior agitation. He felt the need of making some intellectual exertion, just as a child stretches its limbs when it suffers with pain. He wanted to become oblivious to the thoughts that arose in his mind at the sight of Anna and Vronsky, whose name he heard on all sides. He disguised his mental disturbance by talking. "Danger," he said, "is an indispensable condition in these races of cavalry officers. If England can show in her history glorious deeds of arms performed by her cavalry, she owes it solely to the historic development of vigor in her people and her horses. Sport, in my opinion, has a deep significance, and, as usual, we take it only in its superficial aspect." "Not superficial," said the Princess Tverskaya. "They say that one of the officers has broken 2 ribs." Alexei Alexandrovich smiled on the speaker with a cold expression which showed only his teeth. "I admit, Princess, it is that in this case it's not superficial, but serious, but that's not the point," and he turned again to the general and resumed his dignified discourse. "You must not forget that those who take part are military men, and this career is their choice, and that every vocation has its reverse side of the medal. This belongs to the calling of war. Such sport as boxing matches and Spanish bullfights are indications of barbarism, but specialized sport is a sign of development. No, I won't come another time, the Princess Betsy was saying. It's too exciting for me. Don't you think so, Anna? It is exciting, but it's fascinating, said another lady. If I had been a Roman, I should never have left the circus. Anna did not speak, but was gazing intently through her glass. At this moment a tall general came across the pavilion. Alexey Alexandrovitch, breaking off his discourse abruptly, arose with dignity and made a low bow. "Aren't you racing?" asked the general jestingly. "My race is a far more difficult one," replied Alexey Alexandrovitch respectfully, and though this answer was not remarkable for its sense, the military man seemed to think he had received a witty repartee from a witty man, and appreciated la pointe de la sauce. "There are two sides to the question," Alexey Alexandrovitch said, resuming. "That of a spectator and that of the participant. And I confess that a love for such spectacles is a genuine sign of inferiority in the people. But, Princess, a wager," cried the voice of Stepan Arkadyevitch from below, addressing Betsy. "Which side will you take?" "Anna and I bet on Prince Kuzovlev," replied Betsy. "I'm for Vronsky, a pair of gloves." "Good. How jolly, isn't it?" Alexey Alexandrovitch stopped speaking while this conversation was going on around him, and then he began anew. "I confess, manly games." At this instant the signal of departure was heard, and all conversation ceased. Alexey Alexandrovitch also ceased speaking, but while everyone stood up so as to look at the Reka, he, not feeling interested in the race, instead of watching the riders, looked around the assembly with weary eyes. His gaze fell upon his wife. Her face was pale and stern. Nothing existed for her beyond the one person whom she was watching. Her hands convulsively clutched her fan. She held her breath. Karenin looked around at the faces of other women. "There's another lady very much moved, and still another just the same. It's very natural," said Alexey Alexandrovitch to himself. He didn't wish to look at her, but his gaze was irresistibly drawn to her face, whereon he read too plainly, and with feelings of horror, all that he tried to ignore. When Kuzovlev fell, the excitement was general, but Alexey Alexandrovitch saw clearly by Anna's pale, triumphant face that he who fell was not the one whom her gaze was riveted. When after Makotin and Vronsky crossed the great hurdle, another officer was thrown head first and was picked up for dead. A shudder of horror ran through the assembly. But Alexey Alexandrovitch perceived that Anna noticed nothing, and did not know what the people were talking about. The more he studied her face, the greater became his shame. Absorbed as she was in her interest in Vronsky's course, Anna was conscious that her husband's cold eyes were on her, and she turned around towards him for an instant questioningly, and with a slight frown. "Ach, I don't care," she seemed to say as she turned her glass from the race. She did not look at him again. The race was disastrous. Out of 17 riders, more than half were thrown. Towards the end, the excitement became intense, the more because the emperor showed dissatisfaction.